Machiavelli never feared open enemies. He feared something worse, the smiling creditor. Because not every prison has bars. Some are built with gratitude, favors, and loans. And by the time you realize it's a cage, the door is already closed from the inside. This is the essence of Machiavelli's warning about debt. It's not about numbers, it's about power. He understood that once you owe someone money, support, or even kindness, you are no longer free. You become predictable, manageable, and worst of all, owned. This is the hidden psychology behind all forms of debt. It's not the currency that traps you, it's the obligation, the quiet, invisible expectation that now you must serve. The moment you owe, you're no longer equal. Machiavelli believed power must never be split, not in appearance, not in perception, and certainly not in reality. When you are in debt, even to someone close, even for something small, the dynamic shifts instantly. You are no longer independent. You are no longer negotiating as a sovereign force. You are now operating from beneath, whether you admit it or not. If you borrow money from a friend, you can no longer speak as freely. If you ask for help in secret, they now have a piece of your image. If you take a favor from a powerful figure, you just gave them leverage. Debt alters the mental contract between two people. It says, you now move with my permission. And even if that permission is never directly revoked, the fear of it being revoked starts to shape your behavior. This is how rulers become puppets, and how strong men turn into cautious, nodding figures with one eye always watching the one they owe. The illusion of a harmless favor. Modern thinking likes to dress debt in nice words. Support system, mutual aid, network. But Machiavelli saw through all of it. Every favor carries a string, and most of those strings are invisible until you're already tangled. He warned, men are more quickly offended by a denial of repayment than by an open enemy. Why? Because enemies you can predict, but creditors wear a smile until the moment you disobey. And when you finally say no, that smile vanishes, and the full weight of your invisible debt crashes down. Debt creates fear, not loyalty. Rulers often believe that giving money or benefits to the people would make them loyal. Machiavelli disagreed. He believed it made them dependent, yes, but not loyal. And dependence breeds two things: fear and resentment. They fear losing the source of their comfort. They resent their inability to escape it. This is what modern systems of debt have become: tools of quiet control. Whether it's financial debt, emotional debt, or professional debt, the outcome is the same. The debtor obeys not because they believe, but because they can't afford not to. And when fear replaces respect, the relationship becomes fragile. The moment a better offer comes along, they will betray you without hesitation because their loyalty was never real. Debt is a muzzle on power. When you owe someone, especially someone with authority, your actions become conditional. You pause before speaking. You second-guess every move. You wait for approval even when none is required. This is how empires are tamed, not by war, but by loans. Machiavelli understood that true power comes from freedom of movement, the ability to say yes or no without permission. Debt removes that freedom. It rewires your instincts. Now, every decision passes through the filter of, what will they think? That is not power. That is quiet captivity. Psychological debt is worse than financial debt. Not all debt involves money. Some of the most binding forms come from emotional transactions. You're helped when you're at your lowest. Someone saves you from a mistake. They say they believe in you when no one else does. Now you owe them, not legally, but spiritually. That's the deepest kind of debt, because it disguises itself as love, friendship, or loyalty. But it's still a chain. And when the person who helped you begins to manipulate you, you can't fight back, because they rescued you. Machiavelli's teaching? Don't put yourself in that position. If someone helps you, repay quickly. Clear the slate. Never let someone hold your progress as their possession. The rich man is not always free. People often believe that wealth is freedom. But Machiavelli would argue, only if the wealth is yours. Not if it's borrowed. Not if it's inherited. Not if it's gifted. Because when money is gifted, the giver expects obedience. And when it's borrowed, the lender expects submission. This is why rulers often feared bankers more than generals. A general might take your crown, but a banker could take your options. A rich man in debt is just a well-decorated servant, and his riches become part of the illusion that he's free, when in reality, every dollar is already spoken for. The hidden cost of getting ahead too fast. In the modern world, people want success instantly. They'll take loans to start businesses they don't understand. They'll buy into friendships that feel useful. They'll beg for mentorship just to skip the line. And it works for a while, until the bill arrives. And when it does, it doesn't just ask for repayment, it asks for compliance. Machiavelli warned, never accept power at the price of your independence. The moment someone gives you a shortcut, they also give themselves the right to demand a detour. You got ahead quickly, but not freely. And in the long game of power, speed means nothing if your hands are already tied. Control is maintained through what you owe. Governments, empires, and institutions all survive on the same principle. Keep the people owing something. You owe taxes. You owe student loans. You owe social expectations. You owe the identity they gave you. Now you're compliant. Not because you believe, but because you're trapped. This is Machiavelli's nightmare. A population not ruled by force, but by quiet, invisible debts, unable to rebel, because doing so would mean losing the very comforts those debts temporarily afford. A ruler who wants total control doesn't need chains. He just needs people to believe they can't afford to disobey. This is just the surface of what Machiavelli feared about debt. Not just the numbers, but the psychology behind it. Debt is the silent battlefield of modern life. No swords, no bloodshed, just quiet submission disguised as normal. But Machiavelli saw it for what it really was, a political weapon. Used not just by kings and bankers, but by manipulators, fake friends, employers, and even family. Because once someone believes they have done enough for you, they will begin to believe they own you. And that's when the trap closes. You're no longer dealing with generosity. You're dealing with ownership masquerading as kindness. The one who gives sets the rules. The Machiavellian truth is this: the moment someone gives you something, whether it's money, status, or even protection, they gain the moral high ground. They may not say it directly, but the new power structure is clear. You can't criticize them. You can't disagree too loudly. You can't walk away without guilt. You've entered their frame now, and you no longer get to define the rules of engagement. This is why the most dangerous people aren't always the ones who take from you. It's the ones who give, then expect silence, loyalty, or obedience in return. To the outside world, it looks like you owe them respect. But behind closed doors, they remind you, you wouldn't be here without me. How powerful men weaponize debt. In courts, in boardrooms, in private relationships, debt is used to train people. You see it in politics constantly. A rising figure is given access, connections, or media support. In return, they're expected to vote a certain way. If they resist, suddenly that support disappears, or worse, turns against them. Machiavelli saw this happen across Italian city-states. Ambitious young men were lifted up quickly, only to become pawns in larger games they never agreed to. Debt made them kings, but not rulers. It made them visible, but not free. And this is exactly what happens today. People chase sponsorships, favors, and shortcuts. And once they accept, they become tools, pushed forward, but always steered by someone else. The trap of emotional leverage. Financial debt is dangerous, but emotional debt is often harder to escape, especially when it comes from people who meant well. The parent who reminds you what they gave up. The friend who says, "After everything I've done for you." The mentor who shifts from guiding you to owning your success. These emotional hooks are rarely explicit. They come disguised as guilt, love, or duty. And because you're not allowed to call them out, they stay embedded in your psychology, controlling your decisions, shaping your self-worth, turning your gratitude into a leash. Machiavelli's advice here would be brutal but clear: repay kindness quickly or sever it cleanly, but never leave it hanging, because unspoken debts grow teeth. What the world doesn't want you to know about independence. True independence is expensive. It means refusing help you can't pay back, turning down connections that come with strings, building slowly instead of quickly so you own everything you stand on. And because it's so hard, most people choose fake independence. They live in luxury, but it's rented. They drive nice cars, but they're leased. They look powerful, but the deals behind the curtain say otherwise. Machiavelli would ask, what good is a crown if someone else holds the receipt? He knew a man owned by creditors is never feared. He's pitied, he's tolerated, but never respected, because debt makes your future negotiable. How to see a debt trap before it closes. There's a moment right before you say yes, where the trap is still visible. Someone offers to invest in your dream. A friend offers help, but their tone hints at later expectations. A figure of influence offers exposure, but their eye says, "You'll owe me." In that moment, you must remember, nothing comes free. And the more generous the offer, the more dangerous the terms may be. Ask, can I repay this without compromising my future decisions? Will this make me hesitate the next time I need to act freely? Am I doing this because I trust the person? Or because I'm afraid to say no? If you hesitate, the answer is already clear. Power that comes too quickly always costs you more than it gives. The Machiavellian way to stay untouchable. So how do you stay free from the chains of debt in a world built on it? Machiavelli would give you 4 unshakable rules. Own everything you can. Never depend on someone else's name, network, or wallet. Build slow. Build silent. But build independently. Repay quickly and publicly. The moment someone helps you, look for a way to balance the scale. Don't let favors linger. The longer you wait, the heavier they become. Never borrow status. Be wary of platforms, shoutouts, or cosigns. You didn't earn those with your own merit, and they can be taken away just as quickly. If you must owe, owe strategically. Sometimes debt is unavoidable. If so, choose creditors with no power over your decisions. Take from those who cannot command your future. These aren't just financial rules. They are psychological armors, shields against invisible manipulation. The final trick? Make others owe you. The only safe position in a world of debt? Be the one who is owed. But don't make it obvious. Offer help quietly, without reminders. Give value without public debt. Make people feel they chose their dependence on you. Then when the moment comes, you don't demand repayment. You imply it. You raise an eyebrow. You go silent. And they scramble to do the right thing, not realizing you've already won. This is how true rulers move. They never owe. They are never owned. And yet, everyone around them is loyal, grateful, afraid to lose their favor. Not because of force, but because of the unspoken debt they carry. Most people walk into chains smiling. They sign the contract. They take the loan. They say, thank you, because they don't see the chain. They see opportunity. They see generosity. They see speed, ease, shortcuts. But what Machiavelli understood, and what most people never learn until it's too late, is this: nothing offered for free is ever without a cost. And the cost of debt is not money, it's not interest, it's not numbers on a page. The cost is freedom. And once it's gone, you don't even realize you've been robbed. Because the cage looks like a gift box. Governments use debt to breed obedience. If you want to rule people without them rebelling, don't chain their bodies, chain their lifestyles. Machiavelli predicted this long before modern banking. Make the people comfortable. Give them credit, benefits, stimulus. Let them build a life dependent on your systems. Then, when they're deep in debt, they won't fight back. They'll protect the system that enslaves them because it also sustains them. This is how rulers avoid revolts, not by fear, but by convenience. And once people become comfortable slaves, they'll mock those who still fight to be free. That's the genius of systemic debt. It doesn't just control individuals, it rewires their sense of what's normal. Debt creates the illusion of power. Walk through any modern city. People driving luxury cars they don't own, living in apartments they can't afford, wearing brands bought on credit, speaking with confidence backed by loans. From a distance, they look powerful. But if you paused their cash flow for 30 days, they'd collapse. Machiavelli would laugh at the modern world, not because it's evil, but because it's so easy to rule. When power is measured by appearances, people will willingly put themselves in debt just to look like they're winning. And those appearances are the perfect leash, because once a man is more afraid of losing face than losing freedom, he's already conquered. The slave who thinks he's free. This is the final stage of debt, when the debtor forgets he's in debt, when he justifies the system, defends the person who owns him, believes obedience is his own choice. This isn't just financial anymore. This is psychological colonization. He doesn't ask if the rules are fair. He doesn't ask if he could live differently. He only asks, how do I keep what I have? And because his life depends on it, he becomes loyal, not to truth, not to strength, but to survival. This is the silent death of the sovereign man. He smiles, he works, he complies, but he's already given away the most important thing he ever had, his ability to walk away. How debt destroys the warrior spirit. When you're in debt, you start calculating risk differently. You no longer ask, is this fight worth taking? You ask, can I afford to lose? And the moment you start thinking that way, you've already lost. Because you won't take bold actions. You won't speak dangerous truths. You won't confront anyone stronger than you. Why? Because you have something to lose, and someone who can take it away. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers. A man with nothing to lose is the most dangerous, but a man in debt is the most obedient. Debt neuters rebellion. It softens your fire. It turns warriors into accountants, checking the balance before raising their voice. The rise of dependency culture. Today's world teaches people to seek safety through dependency. Depend on student loans to get ahead. Depend on jobs that demand silence. Depend on government assistance. Depend on borrowed identity, followers, clout, validation. And each time you depend, you're trained to fear withdrawal. You begin to guard your chains. You become grateful for your leash. But Machiavelli would ask, what happens when the master grows tired of feeding you? What happens when the help disappears? When the payments stop? When the support vanishes? Dependency always feels safe until it's taken from you. Then you realize, you didn't build strength. You built reliance. And that reliance makes you replaceable. The debtor cannot lead. In any hierarchy, social, political, or strategic, the one who owes cannot lead. Why? Because leadership demands freedom. A true leader must be able to offend without fear, make enemies without hesitation, lose comfort without collapsing. But a man in debt? He calculates every word. He checks the wind before moving. He bends to his obligations before he stands for his beliefs. You can't inspire people when they sense your fear. You can't guide people when they know you're hiding compromises. Machiavelli's law is simple. The man who leads must owe no one. The man who owes must never lead. Because the minute your decisions are shaped by invisible hands, your authority vanishes. The strategic use of giving. Here's where it flips. Machiavelli didn't just warn about being in debt. He taught how to use it. Not by borrowing, but by giving. If you want to control someone long-term, don't threaten them. Don't demand obedience. Instead, give them something they're too afraid to lose. It could be an opportunity, a platform, your support, your silence. Give it freely, but make sure they know it came from you. Now you don't need to issue commands. They'll obey before you even speak, because they're afraid of what happens if you walk away. And the best part? It doesn't even feel like control. To them, it feels like loyalty. But to you, it's ownership without ever lifting a sword. The ultimate warning Machiavelli gives us isn't about loans. It isn't even about money. It's about what people will trade to feel safe. Debt, in its most dangerous form, is not imposed. It's accepted, voluntarily, gratefully, blindly. Because deep down, people would rather belong to someone than stand alone. That's why most never become powerful. They sell the throne for a blanket. They trade the sword for a handshake. And they call their submission partnership. But Machiavelli didn't care about comfort. He studied power. And in his study, one law stood above the rest. The man who owes is never free. And the man who is not free can never rule. How to cut the chains before they cut you. You may already be in debt to a person, to a system, to an idea. That's fine. Machiavelli wouldn't blame you. He'd only demand that you start cutting now. Start with these moves. Audit every relationship. Ask, what do they expect from me? What do I owe them? Do I feel guilty around them? Kill hidden dependencies. If your income, safety, or identity depends on someone else's approval, you're on a leash. Disappoint early. The longer you let someone believe they own you, the harder it is to escape. Disappoint them now or obey them forever. Live below your means. Power comes from options. Options come from savings. No savings, no options. Silence your need to impress. Most people borrow because they want to appear successful before they are. Cut that need. Earn in silence. Appear only when you're untouchable. If these feel hard, good. You're pulling the hooks out. That pain? It's freedom growing back. Stop calling it loyalty. People love to say they're loyal to someone who gave them a shot. But Machiavelli would press, are you loyal or are you afraid? Loyalty is a virtue only when it's chosen freely, not when it's a response to fear, guilt, or dependence. If you can't walk away, if you can't say no, if you can't speak honestly without risking your place, that's not loyalty. That's debt in disguise. Cut it. Burn the fake loyalty. Build relationships where the connection is based on mutual strength, not past obligations. That's how you surround yourself with equals, not owners. Debt doesn't end when you pay it. Even when you repay what you owe, the psychological stain can remain. You still feel like you owe them, like they're above you, like you'll never truly be even. That's the final trap, the emotional ghost of the debt. Machiavelli knew that men rarely forgive power shifts. Once someone held you in their hand, they never forget it. Even if you return the favor, even if you surpass them, in their eyes, you'll always be beneath them. So don't just repay. Surpass. Rise so high that the debt becomes irrelevant. Build so strong that they cannot claim your foundation. Move so far ahead that they're no longer in your story. That's the only way to erase the stain, make them irrelevant. The Machiavellian shift from debtor to master. Once you've cut the chains, truly cut them, you begin to walk differently. You no longer flinch when someone offers help. Smile out of obligation. Stay in rooms you don't respect. You become unavailable for leverage, and people will feel it. They'll test you. They'll try to reattach the leash. They'll say, "You've changed. You used to need me. You wouldn't be here without me." Let them talk, because once you're free, their words can't reach you. You're no longer on their frequency. You don't owe. You don't fear. You don't obey. That's when you become what Machiavelli respected most, a man who needs nothing and therefore cannot be moved. The weaponization of scarcity. Once you're truly free from debt, you gain access to a power most never touch, the power of restraint. Now you can walk away from bad deals because you don't need their offer. You can reject fake allies because you don't need validation. You can take your time because you're not rushing to pay anyone back. This is how true rulers move. They are selective, not desperate. They speak last, not first. They don't chase, they attract, because their scarcity isn't an act. It's a product of independence. And the world worships what it cannot control. The final law, never offer what you wouldn't accept. If you hate being in debt, don't create it in others unless you're ready to be hated, envied, or overthrown. Machiavelli warned, men will sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance. Meaning, people forget pain. They don't forget debt they can't repay. So if you ever choose to give, help, or elevate someone, do it cleanly. Give without expecting control. Help without reminding them. Elevate them without making them a servant. Why? Because true kings don't create slaves. They create future allies. And if you build others without strings attached, you'll build a kingdom that won't collapse when they finally grow strong enough to repay you. Debt is the oldest game of thrones. Machiavelli studied the Borgia, the Medici, the French, the Spanish, the papacy. They all had armies. But the ones who ruled longest weren't the strongest. They were the ones who understood debt, who used it to bind allies, who avoided it themselves, who looked generous but moved like tyrants. And in the end, when the wars ended and the dust settled, it wasn't the loudest who remained. It was the ones no one could touch, because they were clean, untethered, unowned. That's what you're aiming for. Not just wealth, not just control, but invisible strength, the kind that no one can buy and no one can take. Walk like you owe nothing. Act like your power was self-built. And if you ever must owe, make sure you're the only one who knows. Because in Machiavelli's world, and in yours, freedom isn't given, it's reclaimed, one broken chain at a time.